I want to talk about some current topical stuff. I think, especially on the Solana eco side, Pump Fund, Coin Wars have been the topic of many things as of recent. I think you had a recent tweet talking about Pump Fund as it relates to Zora and sort of where everyone stands. Like, do you think Pump Fund is still better positioned than what you could see as a competitor such as Zora to win sort of the long-term top of funnel creators, deployers want to launch on that platform?
Yes, I think the atomic unit of Zora is incorrect, which is a content coin. It's just too much noise, too much fragmentation, and you need to create some liquidity around something. That thing could be live stream, it could be a meme coin, it could be something else. But tweets and pictures are truly infinite, and I don't think that content coins really work for those. I think to the extent they can work, it's more likely to be tied to a live stream where you get this bi-directional real-time feedback between the creator and the token price.
Do you think it's a new game that's being played right now with Zora, or is it just rebranded what we've already been doing in the trenches for the last couple of years?
I mean, the mechanics of the game are different, or rather, maybe even say the rules of the game are different. So, like, it is different. There's a lot of commonalities. Being first earlier is better than probably being later, being the obvious one. The rendering of judgment of like taste is probably fairly similar. Although, look, I've never called a meme coin early. I've never called a content coin early. So, what do I know about having taste? But I would suspect there's some common overlap in skill there. Then look, the whole part of like understanding a large part of the game is who's already in, right? And I suspect that those dynamics are fairly similar.
I think it's a fair take. It's been interesting, but I don't know. I was a huge fan of Tech back in the day, and it's kind of hard to like get back into the social side of launching once you've already done it and gotten burned. On more general market stuff, I guess as it relates to ETH and Sol, like why do you think ETH has been outperforming most of the market, in particular Solana, over the last 1 to 2 months?
I mean, the ETH DATs certainly are real. And there's the Joe Lubin one, the Tom Lee one. I don't know if there's, I guess the other one's Andrew Keys. I think those are the three big ones. And then, there's a perception out there amongst TradFi that Ethereum is the dominant chain. And that statement used to be basically universally true and is today only partially true. It is true for stablecoin issuance. It is not true for stablecoin movement. It is not true for trading volumes against stablecoins. It's certainly not true for daily users, but it is for at least one very obvious headline metric, which is which chain has the most stablecoins issued. And with the Genius Act passing recently, a lot of money has gone into that without thinking much harder.
Are you super opinionated on the treasury company sort of onslaught? Like, do you think that Solana is missing a Michael Saylor figure, a Tom Lee figure, and without it is going to continue to lag?
No, the DATs are not going to raise an infinite amount of money. And look, the only person who's demonstrated an ability to raise money over a long horizon is Saylor. No one else is remotely close to being able to demonstrate that. Do I think Solana needs a DAT? No. Does having a DAT helpful? Probably, but I don't know. I don't think it matters too much. The reality with these DATs is that so far none of them have done anything interesting. Doesn't mean they can't, but they haven't. And if they don't do anything interesting, then they're going to unwind at some point because they have no reason to exist. So I'm not optimistic about them in the long run in their current form. I think the more interesting DATs would, here's just a very trivial example. You would roll up a bunch of small wallets or a bunch of small apps built on the chain that produce revenue tied to usage of the chain, something like that. And now you start to get more interesting. Can you do synergies between those wallets? But have some sort of operating entity tied to the ecosystem? That becomes much more interesting. But no one's demonstrated any ability to do that yet.
Hypothetically, you could act as the Sailor for Solana. I'm just throwing it out there.
I'm flattered you asked. I've certainly thought about it, talked about it. No commitments to be made at this time.
Good answer. What does the hypothetical unraveling of these treasury companies look like in the scenario you referenced where they don't really serve a purpose, they don't really do anything? Is that just an all-out cascade?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's going to be vicious or existential to anyone other than the DATs themselves. But at some point, the people who own the equity in these things are going to say, I don't want to own common in this thing. I just want to own the staking ETF. I'm like, dude, Solana's going to have a staking ETF in like the next, like, I don't know, 8 weeks or so, maybe 9 weeks. And we're very close. And so at some point, people are going to say, like, why am I paying management all these fees? And like, what are they doing? And the convertibles aren't clearing, and they're at risk of being liquidated. And like, I don't know, why do I own this thing? And then the unwind is just you sell. If you're trading below NAV, then you're selling spot ETH or spot Bitcoin or whatever to buy your own shares, presumably. And so that's kind of how these things unwind.
What do you think the staking ETF changes about the narrative or thesis of Solana when that is live, and particularly on how macro views Solana as an asset class? TradFi, excuse me.
I think different people would buy ETH or SOL for different reasons. There is a group of people who look at the headline yield number and like they're very excited about that number. That number today is, I think, on Judo Sol something like 7.8, 7.9% roughly, which is a real number. So there's people who are attracted to that. That's legitimate. There's other people who are going to say, I want to go long DeFi and Solana is the fastest horse. There's other people who are going to say, I don't know what DeFi is. I look at the relative market caps of these things. Well, I like one more than the other. And there's going to be, so different people will look at it kind of through different vantage points. I think the people who are underwriting Solana as a long-term hold because they think it's the fastest horse don't care about the yield. The yield is nice, but like that's not what's getting them there to make an incremental buy decision.
Makes sense. That's a good take. Also, the 7-8% is pretty fucking good on Jito.
And yeah, look, interest rates are probably coming down. I think it estimates are 50 bips before the end of the year, right, on treasuries. And so, that's obviously going to create more incentive for people to go into something like Solana staking ETF.
On the on-chain side of things for Solana, which is where I spend most of my time, do you think in order for Solana to make a new all-time high and really hit some of these ridiculous targets, the on-chain meme coin volume has to return to peak fall 2024 through like January 2025 levels? Like, how important is that?
Not that important.
Really?
It's helpful. Like, it's not bad, but I don't think it's really necessary at all. Look, for Solana it's like trading. I call it 100 billion market cap, like plus or minus something like that. For this thing to get to 500 billion to a trillion in those kinds of dollar figures, you have to believe in internet capital markets. And that means a lot of things. That means you have tons of equities issued on chain. That means you have banks settling payments on chain. That means you've got B2B transactions and flowing over this thing. And that means you've got major social networks like integrating crypto in like a fundamental way. And now that the GDS Act has passed, and I think we're going to get the Clarity Act here in the next couple months, in that world, the path to the internet capital markets happening, I think, becomes a lot. It's not going to be done in like 2 years.
Yeah.
But there is a world 2 to 3 years from now in which general acceptance in capital markets is that the future of trading is on Solana. What I mean by like to understand that statement, like people were saying in 1998, the internet's going to change the world. Like that was a thing a lot of technology people said. But like if you ask my mom, is the internet going to change the world in 1998? And by the way, 1998 is the year that Google came out as a sense of reference. And 2004 is when Google IPO'd. And I think it's reasonable that like by 2004, most people, like assuming they were using Google at that time, they were like, dude, the internet's awesome. Like this Google thing rocks. And Gmail is actually kind of useful too. And then they were like, okay, I understand why the internet is going to change the world, even though we didn't have mobile yet, we didn't have cloud yet, we didn't have social media, we didn't have Google Docs. Like a lot of that stuff wasn't here. But like Google was like, you could understand that a little bit more viscerally. And I think that we're 2 to 5 years away from like that general understanding where people will be like, yeah, I understand stocks and bonds and FX and everything is going to trade on chain, even if only a small percentage of it has happened so far.